So I've got a question about distinctions between energy body and gross physical body, and then sort of wondering about ideas like breath body, and then maybe it doesn't feel necessary to my question, but I've heard of astral body and causal body. In general, what I'm noticing is that there's this subtle sense of what I personally come to understand as energy body, when there's less hindrances, and when I'm moving more slowly and cultivating kind of appreciation, things like that. In general, the practices we're doing feel like they're giving a lot more energy to the system. So with that feels like a lot more restlessness, or at least noticing a lot more restlessness. So and that's just an aside. The main point of the question is noticing quite a few times where the sense of breath body or energy body, I'm not sure the distinction, seems pretty large and subtle and lovely, and the physical body is like contracting and maybe I'd call it pity, but it feels kind of sensing is unpleasant rather than pleasant, like quite intense. So kind of feelings like like sort of drowning feeling, like when everything's pretty still. The physical breath is very shallow and stuttery and jerky, and there is a sense of kind of what I'm calling pity around that, but I'm sensing that as unpleasant at the same time. I'm sensing the energy body, breath body as being very pleasant out there. And I think probably if the retreat was longer and I wasn't so engrossed in all the talks and just having a lot more quiet time, I'd probably work my way around it. But as it is, I guess, do I have a question? Is there a question?
That was going to be my question to you, which you don't have to, but is there a question?
Okay. What are the useful distinctions around physical or gross body and energy body, and where do we kind of put down one and pick up the other?
And perhaps what to do with this funny mixture of feelings that's going on here. Okay, so Lawrence is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, so there's this thing called the energy body, which sometimes you experience as kind of light and pleasant, and then there's the physical body and more gross sensations, and then there's also, you've heard of things like the astral body and things like that. What's the distinction there? Is there a distinction, etc.? It's part of one question. And then secondly, practically speaking, sometimes it feels like out here, you said, the energy body feels really nice. How far out are we talking?
In the hall yesterday, like maybe 8-10 feet.
Oh, quite wide, yeah, okay.
And yesterday, looking out the window, it was kind of like having a go, okay, can I get it to reach the tree?
Uh-huh. How did that go?
And I thought, it's just a concept, this place.
Okay, so we're talking quite wide, yeah. And
so I don't know if I managed it.
yeah, but there's a sense that out there somehow it's really quite nice and rarefied and subtle and pleasant, and something in here, and you're not quite sure what, feels difficult.
Yeah, particularly around breathing and kind of sometimes jerky sensations and tightening.
And is the body actually moving in jerky sensations?
Yeah, playing around with the tree. From the jet here, yeah, the body was kind of like, okay, I could call this pleasant, it's a bit...
Yeah, okay. So, in terms of the conceptual distinctions, I don't know the answer. in a way, I'm not sure how much it matters. I again, it's like I feel like, oh, now we're a little bit stuck with this word energy body, which maybe if I go back a few years, I would come up with a different, because it's more a way of seeing, like everything else, a way of relating. So sometimes this space feels more like a field of energy and light and pleasant, and maybe that's where it got its name. But that partly comes from a way of paying attention to it. Okay, it partly comes as a reflection of what's going on emotionally and energetically, etc. But at other times it can be very dense in a problematic way, and dense also in a lovely way. So I think we touched on this, you and I, last retreat. Is that there's a whole spectrum to what it can feel like in terms of density or insubstantiality. All of that's energy body. It's just the way I'm relating to it that gives it that whole. So energy body is more a way of relating, a way of seeing, a way of sensing. Does that make sense? That's not confining. Maybe that's a way of putting it. It's not confining my experience to just the range of the usual kind of sensations we have, or the usual ideas of the body. Yeah. So maybe that's a better way of saying it. It's a way of perceiving, a way of looking. Yeah. Astral body and all that, yeah, I mean, you can have all kinds of experiences. What the truth is about that, I'm more inclined to say the truth depends on how I'm looking at it, and the divisions I make, and it's interesting when you get and kind of see different people's systems. This system has 4 chakras, that system has 7, that system has 9, that system has 8. This one's red, no, it's purple. It's like... It kind of goes to show that the way I'm looking at the body, what's going on conceptually, what's going on in my relationship to it, fabricates, constructs what's happening to it. Is that a problem? No. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So I don't know the answers, if there even are any, other than it's a dependent arising. Do you feel like you need? This is the first part of the question. Do you feel like you need to know the answers to that, or like what's behind the question?
It feels more like exploration at the moment.
Yeah.
And noticing, yesterday particularly, okay, this sense of the body is moving quite a lot with the breath, and it's very subtle, while simultaneously there's something going on here.
Yeah, okay.
It's worked called dukkha.
Yeah. So if we come back to that just in a second, the problem thing and how we can relate to it and work with it. You said something very, very lovely. It's like it's an exploration. So what you're exploring is experience. So the experience. Now with that, there will be certain conceptions of what the energy body is, but explore. I mean, what I would feel wary of is getting too stuck in one kind of experience. I'm always dense, and I'm always focused on dukkha, or I'm always really wide because that's the cosmic consciousness, or whatever. It's like all these range of experiences are available. Yeah, can it be related to the breath? Absolutely. So there's breath, and they talk about subtle breath. And that's all, I could use those words interchangeably, breath body and energy body, subtle body, it's all good. Or you can have an experience where the experience of the energy body and the perception of the energy body doesn't seem to have anything to do with the breath. You stop breathing, and you're still, there's all the vitality and you're alive. So I tend to be more fluid with these kind of divisions. Divisions, delineations, concepts, they're only useful insofar as they're useful. And they're not realities. So it's like you can pick up a delineation, create a delineation, and if it's helpful for you, go for it. Just don't get locked into it. If it's not helpful, leave it. But if you view the whole thing as an exploration of experience, which means perception, and all reality is in the realm of experience and perception, which is bound up with ways of looking, dependent on ways. You understand? So if you view it that way, then do you understand what I was getting at? It's like the conceptions are not kind of realities outside of you. The whole thing is just in the service of exploration of experience, either what's helpful, what eases dukkha, or what's soul-making, or both. Yeah? So in terms of this thing that you're feeling, I don't know, maybe if we have time together we can do a little bit, but what I will say is sometimes what happens is let me work the other way around. So if it's pleasant out here, it depends on your intention, okay? If my intention is to have some samadhi, some well-being, then first port of call would be go to where it's pleasant, okay? In the stream of that intention, that's not the time to get entangled in the difficult, okay? So it's not that the difficult is not, you're not ignoring it, but you're give more attention and nuzzle up and enjoy the pleasant. Most people have a habit of getting pulled into the unpleasant in ways that are not that helpful. Okay, so first port of call, what you'll often find is that inclining the attention towards the pleasant and just again and again enjoying it goes back to just okay, let's just find the pleasant again and again. What can happen then is the pleasant begins to wash over the unpleasant. It's the subtly unskillful attention to the unpleasant that's generating the unpleasant sometimes. You understand? So there's just one kind of, if you can incline the mind that way again and again in the moment, just very, very relaxed. Your job is just to find the pleasure and just subtly enjoy it and keep doing that. And sometimes you don't need to bother about this. It will blend over if the intention is towards samadhi. Yeah. Sometimes that still within the intention towards samadhi that doesn't help. So then you can see, does this thing want to move in any way? Okay, now you mentioned restlessness and it seemed like it was a bit. So then you might get the sense somehow it wants to, could be go out the top of the head or out the throat or this way, or it's like, what does it want to do? And kind of allow it to do that. So the energy body is dependent on perception, it's a fabrication, that whole, you can either imagine it do that or just kind of open it. Open the energy body to allow it to move how it wants to move. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Do it as we're speaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could probably take forever.
Yeah, that's why I said if it's still, if you want, we can, because we're meeting anyway. So
I feel like.
Yeah, it would be better one-on-one. Yeah, that's fine. So, but as a principle, when I'm talking to everyone as well, it's like, sometimes contraction, pain, these things are energetic. In energetic terms, they're just stuck energy. They want to move in a certain way, and we just need to help to allow them to move. So you can use your imagination, whatever. You can use the breath. So it's like, what is it? If it's here, what is it then? Maybe it wants to breathe in and out this way, or in and out the back, or up and down and out through the head, or in through the head, or out through your perineum, whatever. There's some way of bringing the dynamism of the felt and imagined breath energy into play with this and including it, and that allows it to move more. Yeah. So the thing I say about samadhi is anything goes. Anything. If it works, great. Doesn't matter. We're just in the business of here's this field. Let's try and get some well-being without struggling too much. So if it's the imagination, great. If it's a kind of more energetic thing, fantastic. Third possibility, still in the realm of the intention of samadhi, is okay. Those two didn't work, and then it's like to go to this stuck place, contracted place, difficult place, and actually move into a mode of kind of hyper allowing. Okay, so it's unpleasant, and then I need to. This moment, I just completely open to that unpleasantness. I completely, there's this kind of open. Yeah, does that make sense? What's happening then is I'm entering into a way of looking that is minimal aversion. You understand? So I have to go 120% opening, allowing, welcoming to this thing, because what's keeping it in place is the aversion. You understand? There's a subtle aversion to it.
And also the concept of drowning.
Yeah, well, that's what, and I've never had something like that, but it's like maybe there's actual, if you drown, there's a quite fearful sensation. Presumably, maybe is that caught up in it, or do you actually feel like you're drowning in something or other?
It's similar to practicing with you a few years ago, and did shift then. Actually, then it was hearing another teacher's voice. So that's an imaginal influence. But yeah, it's like, okay, there's very little oxygen moving and there's lots of jerking around and contraction, and it's like the body doesn't really like this.
Yeah.
But this is kind of what's happening, and simultaneously there's loveliness elsewhere. So it's kind of.
Yeah, there's so many different kind of responses and things you could try. I mean, sometimes it's a matter of, two more things we could say is, like, caring for the being who feels like they're drowning. So it's like, drop the I'm trying for samadhi stuff. It's something needs care there, and there's vulnerability, and then, breath is so primary. If you feel like you can't get your breath, I mean, you're not going to asphyxiate. I can tell you that, but still, that might be not enough. So something needs some care there, in terms of that experience. And in that way of approaching, you would more like gently focus in on that and want to hold it. And it's not just the sensations, because you can kind of laser beam those unpleasant sensations with mindfulness. But we want also to care about the person who feels like they're drowning. You understand? So it's not just sensations reduced from a person. It's sensations with the person, with the self. Yeah. Can I just? Is that okay? And no, maybe that's good. I mean, there's a lot of different things we could say, but how does that sound?
I've got a lot to work with. I probably have to listen to this.
Okay. Yeah. And then we'll hopefully meet, and we can actually play with it a little bit. So yeah. Andrew?
I don't want to step on what you just said, but I get similar kinds of feelings sometimes. And like what you said, I just kind of remind myself I'm not dying. And that sort of helps. I get very short of breath sometimes, and it kind of jerks, and it's very shallow. And it's sort of unpleasant, but I just figure I'm going to survive, so it's...
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you can also, use the breath to smooth the breath and soothe, so it's like, there's so many different possibilities, it's endless and from many different angles and moving in many different directions, but sometimes you can actually, as well as what Andrew said, you can actually use the breath to smooth it out. Smooth that out, and you have to be very gentle. You're not forcing anything. And if I'm coming from, come on, change this. It's really like you're just like you would stroke a, like a cat or something that's wounded or something. It's really you're just easing something with the breath, with kindness and with the breath. And sometimes that can really, basically shift the energy. Heal it, calm it, open it, all that. So there's a lot of possibilities. Andrea, yeah.
My question is kind of related to Sampos the other day about feeding the practice or leaning in a particular direction. So I've been noticing that I might be taking a breath that feels rather lovely, but is not necessarily desire, but I've been perceiving it as desire in the moment, which leads to more breaths or more currents that feel like eros, not necessarily with an image attached to them. And then sometimes an image does come up as a result of perceiving in that way. So the question was more around if there are ways of looking that allow more imaginal to come through, i.e. in the same with metta, of sometimes feeling the sun on your face and suddenly feeling that that's metta coming to you, helped me lean into metta. And the question was, can you do that with desire, this perceiving lovely sensations that may not have that relationship as desire.
I get the thing about the metta and the sun. Can you say the thing about the breath and the desire and the, like, I'm not quite sure what the connection is, but yeah.
Okay. So you might suddenly take a breath in the whole that goes from the nostrils all the way down to the perineum and feels wide and open and lovely. And there isn't an image in your mind at that moment. It's just the body opening. But the next breath, the head's tilted back and there's more sensuousness with the breath. It could be just words that you or Catherine uttered that suddenly sends the body into a little bit of a ooh. And not necessarily an image, but a being into that sort of ooh, having a momentum that would propel it.
I'm not sure. let me try something if I understand. So if we go back to the sunlight on the face, and sometimes one can feel that warmth and that light, or perceive it, but essentially it's an imaginal perception of the sun that's fused with metta. All that's an imaginal constellation. Sun, skin, warmth, metta. These things, if you go to Newton Abbot High Street and say, do you know that the sun radiates loving kindness? It's not a usual perception. So it's an imaginal perception. You understand? So there's something that arises in a moment, and then you can gently kind of encourage that, or deliberately return to it at a different time. Yeah. So the same with the experience of body and breath, actually the experience of anything. So this is, I was wondering, it's actually quite hard to articulate what is it that, when we talk about intrapsychic images, for most people that's relatively easy to understand. Some people they say, oh, I don't get any, because that's a different kind of thing. But when we talk about, like the other day I said this is an imaginal hat. It's not an imaginary hat. Actually, it's not imaginal, but it could be imaginal. But it's not imaginary in the sense that there's a thing here. But it can be an imaginal hat. So it's quite hard to articulate what is it that moves the, if you like, material perception of anything, what is it that infuses it with the imaginal? And how do we make ourselves available to that? And how do we support that? So a lot of the time what happens is actually what you're describing already. We catch things on the breeze. We are in a receptive mode, relatively speaking, and a current just comes and a perception begins to open and we just ride it. So in time that gets more, and dependent on a lot of conditions, that kind of receptivity and sensitivity gets more and more encouraged, yeah? But apart from that, it's actually quite hard to pinpoint what can we do in the moment to encourage that. So I think part of it is the listening to the poetry. There's something Catherine said or whatever. It's like there's ideas and words and other images function as kind of poetic drops of some kind of poetic potion drop that goes into the mix, and it just sparks an imaginal perception. Yeah.
It's not just that, though. Sometimes sound.
It could be absolutely anything. Exactly. But something starts to function as a kind of poetic sort of alchemical elixir thing. But how do we make that? What else is happening there? I haven't quite but I say a few things. There's a loosening that's happening. What's loosened? My ideas of what things are loosened, of how things are. This is the logos. So that doesn't have to be a big deal, but it's just I've relaxed the idea that the sun is only a massive ball of hydrogen in fission or fusion or whatever the nuclear process is going on. It is that, but I've kind of relaxed my conceptual grip. I've also, to a certain extent, there's a bit more looseness in the perception, so that the images can move. There's an inclusion of the energy body again. This is like another aspect. Like the more the energy body is total and involved, the more openness there will be to catching those currents. Other aspects, there's this sense of something being bigger than, and sometimes that's hard to pinpoint. What is it that's bigger than? But where there's this quality of humility and reverence, and the heart is involved with that. So all these aspects, they arise together. I think I said this the other day. But what it also means is that we can kind of loosen some of them, or take care of some of them, or come into an attitude of humility, heartful humility and reverence, and that will support that. Yeah, and then sometimes what can happen just practically is you've had that experience before, and you just gently remember it and open and loosen in this way, and it comes back, and you can write it again, or open to it again, or whatever words. Yeah, but it's actually quite hard to. I would be again wary of formularizing it and coming up with a step one, like that. Although I think there's something to that, because there are certain things that go on that open that. But related to what Catherine was talking about and what we're saying, to me, that's a principal direction that we're going in. So sometimes people say, I want an image, or they hear about someone else's image, some fantastical monster that arose in the meditation, and all this stuff happened with saying to someone it's got 9 heads and it's purple and this green flame comes out of its mouth, and it's like, that's an image. And yeah, great, and it might be really meaningful. The test is in the soul-making, but even more important than that, for me, I think where we're going is, and some people will start there, is in the world being imaginally alive, imaginally perceived, having this dimensionality, opening up sacredness. So that's a really important, what you're asking is really important. It's like how to support that. Is that yeah? Okay, good, thank you. Yes, Rachel, sorry.
So working with some images, what I've noticed has been that if I'm in a sort of a receptive mode, it feels like the image comes, it's very beautiful, it definitely feels like I'm in the realm of the imaginal. And then it sort of, after some time, deliver its message in a way. It feels like it's sort of delivered an insight or delivered something important to me. And then it feels like it goes quickly, and then flickering quickly comes the next image. And so it feels like it's, if I'm in the receptive mode, it feels like it's quite flickery and quite sort of juddery. So in a way I'm feeling like there's more to find in each image. But if I go there, I feel a bit like I'm pushing it or trying to ring something else.
If you go where?
If I sort of try to stay with an image, if I say to myself, stay with this a bit longer, it feels like there's sort of slight ringing, like I'm sort of, it's offered up. And if I receive that, then the next thing's coming.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm understanding, just correct me if I'm. So Rachel's asking that sometimes there's images come up and definitely get the feeling that it's very lovely, and there's the quality of the imaginal, and you recognise all that. And then sometimes what happens is an image delivers its message.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's completely it's given it's sort of offered up its importance.
Yeah, okay. So the image, it feels like at some point the image has conveyed or communicated whatever it was, however it did that, and then what happens is it just goes away, and then another image comes. Is this process happening like super quickly, or it could take any kind of rhythm?
Yeah, not necessarily quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then when you feel like you try and hang on to the image, it feels a little, forced, contracted?
Yeah, it feels like something, the sacredness is falling away.
Yeah, okay. So when she tries to hold on to it, it feels like the sacredness is falling away. How about So I wonder if I'm trying to hold on to this image because either I think I should, or because there might be something else it has to tell me, or in other words, why am I trying to hold on to it? It might be that the intention is making a difference and making it feels draining the sacredness out of it. Is it possible? I don't know, but it might be. Is it possible to actually start with the sense of sacredness, and that the sense of sacredness is not exhausted by the message that you've already got? Yeah. So it might be that. So this is what happens if we. If you think of an image like a person, then the person could rightfully feel insulted and not respected if you just view them in they're there to give me this, and then when that's done they can, it's like if there's a way of entertaining the sense of like the image is inexhaustible, that message was important and part of it, but it doesn't exhaust the image. And the sacredness is always bigger than that message. Yeah. And so, if I don't know if this is possible, if there's a way of like, kind of just really what's happening is we're granting an image its sacredness. We're just entering into that posture, that relationship with it, and seeing what that does, which is a different thing than trying to make it stay. So maybe it's. If that's possible, that's different. Then if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't, but I'm not entering into sort of what is the word? Catherine says I get my English wrong. Utilitarian.
Utilitarian.
Utilitarian. Utilitarian is like a religion, isn't it? Anyway, whatever. I'm not just like what can this give? If I reduce an image to one meaning or one communication, it dies. So it's like just entering into a kind of relationship and an attitude that doesn't do that. But is this potentially relevant or not? You don't look...
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in some way I get that, and in a way that's why I'm sort of opening, wanting to open to it, because I don't want to reduce it just to one message, like give me the message and go,
Right.
I feel like I'm wanting to open to
okay.
that possibility.
Yeah, but maybe it's like getting away from the whole message idea. Is that part of it? It's like more just being in relationship. Well, what about just loving it? What about just hanging out? What about just what does relationship mean? What can relationship mean? Like, it's a different it's a different relationship with the relationship. It might be the part of that might be a sense of like someone asked the other day, I can't remember, but it's like actually there's a kind of obvious thing there, and then there's maybe more subtle, let's call them communications, but they might not be messages or instructions or insights or whatever. There's a rapport, a back and forth, a communication in the broader sense of the word, from the image to you, from you to the image, and some of that stuff is really much more subtle. So it might be a matter of just kind of quietening and taking the pressure off and just attuning more, And having said all that, some images do just come and go. Sometimes it's just the restless mind. Sometimes it's just the nature of things, and it depends on a lot. So sometimes you're skidding around, and images are moving very fast. And you think, is this significant? Is that significant? I'm not sure. And then one becomes meaningful, or more kind of long-lived. But it might be a matter of if I grant it that sacredness and that moreness, then maybe it's a matter of being a little, just if I can ease myself into more sensitivity with that without grasping at it. I feel like I'm not.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's something about the rapport relationship.
Yeah. So, yes. Yeah. Maybe let's just. I think it's in that ballpark. So yeah, and you just see what comes with that. Yeah. Andy said. Sorry. And then we'll get to
It's very quick. So on this retreat and the last one, all the images that come up for me tend to be violently compassionate towards particular blocks in the energy body.
Violently compassionate.
Yeah, either very violent or compassionate.
Oh,
but
violent.
Always a mixture of the two. There's always some sort of violent compassion going on. I'm just wondering whether this is aversion dressed up as a god.
That's a great question.
I don't know. I mean, again, it's like, how does it feel?
Well, there's some release. There's some some piti, sometimes some openness, but nothing. But it doesn't completely unblock that block.
And how do you feel that how do you feel when it doesn't unblock the blockage?
Good question. I suppose there's still like yearning.
Yeah. So let me just help me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So let me just try and repeat that. So Andy's saying, both on this retreat and the last retreat, a lot of the images that come up are in relation to what feels blocked in the body, and a kind of violent compassion that comes up as an image in relation to that, a mixture of violence and compassion, and you're wondering whether that's actually aversion dressed up as a god, so to speak. So asking, well, how do you feel? And it doesn't actually, how does it feel? And so it doesn't actually unblock it. So there's two parts to your answer, but one part was, how does it feel? And the answer you gave was, what happened to the block? Which isn't, it's only a partial answer to how does it feel. Because there's still yearning, longing. I would look more at those kind of emotions and include them more and be with them more. So this is a really important principle. Sometimes it's right in the emotional, not just the physical difficulty, but the emotional kind of sense of I really want this to go, whatever it is, and help me, as you said. Help me is already something there.
Quite often the image would have the same pain as well, so there would be compassion towards it.
Okay, so there's something in that, rather than I'm using this to get rid of the block. So there's something, to me, it's hard sitting there in meditation when the body's aching and I really know that. So, but very easy we can make that the point, as opposed to the bigger, something devotional and heartful and soul-making is around already in the field, but there's a way of shrinking the attention that it, you understand? So is it aversion dressed up as a god? I mean, it might be, but that I would. It sounds like there's aversion in there, but it's not only that, and I can tell from what you're answering. So it's more like opening up that level, that kind of corona around the whole thing. That sounds like, and it's through the emotions there, and that relationship, and as you say, the image reflecting it, etc. And that might be really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a question / wondering, and it's kind of about samadhi, fabrication, and the imaginal. And so for my own practice, it's been predominantly samadhi, and of course, so the samadhi deepens, things kind of just descend into a mush, and they lose their distinction, they lose their complexity, things are less fabricated. So in that kind of state, I can't really resurrect the imaginal image. So I've kind of been just doing imaginal practice, like not in my sitting practice, just in my kind of wandering around or my day-to-day life. And that's what it kind of feels like. It kind of feels like day-to-day life, but with an artistic lens or something like that. But I kind of have this wondering, does it also get more subtle? Does it kind of have that same kind of thread that samadhi does, where it gets more subtle and there is a concentration element to it? Because, if I take it into my meditation practice, I don't have a problem with fabrication or agitation. I live my life that way a lot of the time. But, you know, I'd kind of rather be doing samadhi if I'm sitting there. Do you know what I mean? It's too, you know, it's too agitating. But that's fine, agitating, that's what I'm trying to say. But I'm just wondering, does it kind of get more?
Does the imaginal practice get stiller and more subtle?
Yeah, and more subtle, and does it get more subtle in the same way so that everything becomes a bit stiller? And
Yeah. So I would say yes. Okay. But I would also say, and I think it said it in here the other day. I can't remember. But it's like when you do imaginal practice, generally speaking, and just got you spoke with Andy, but it's like generally speaking, there's some release or opening or harmonization in the energy body that comes with the image. That is your indicator that you're on the right track. There might be agitation in the sense of excitement, etc. But something in the energy body, piti is also agitating.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's not so much the presence of agitation as the presence of some kind of harmonizing in the body. That reminds me of something else to say to Lawrence. So what you get as you do imaginal practice is like at any point there's this possibility of just leaning more into the samadhi, leaning more into the energetic quality of what's going on and enjoying that and opening to that, and it takes you into more samadhi. So you're kind of letting the image go to some extent. You can eventually kind of play with the different emphases of attention. So you could give very little attention to what's happening in the energy body, or most of the attention to what's happening in the energy body, or most of the attention to the image, or most of the attention to the emotion that's happening. So there's all these facets of experience, and you can kind of, with practice, you can kind of decide where to lean at any time. So imaginal practice can absolutely take you to different levels of samadhi just by virtue of staying in touch with what's happening with the energy body, and then at any point just kind of peeling off into that, focusing on that, if you want to. But there's also a way that images, as the whole thing matures, I think get a little more subtle, like most practice. Going back to what you said at first, so with samadhi is a movement of less fabricating. Yeah. When you're doing imaginal practice, you're fabricating. Yeah. Okay. And what can happen though is there's a kind of settling in samadhi, and you can go deep as you want and hang out in that if that's what you like to do, and whatever, that's fine. Then at some point you can kind of just come up a little bit, so to speak, just loosen the whole thing a little bit, and what will have happened in that plunge is the psyche has got loosened, and it can be a place where images are born. If I'm right down there in the stillness or whatever it is, I'm really in a state of non-fabrication, and actually all perception is fabricated, less worldly, bodily, and imaginal. But if I it's like that's a kind of plunge that then I come up a little bit and the whole thing's looser, and then more imaginal stuff can come if you want. Does that sound okay? Yeah? Okay.
Do you want to say something about fabrication to Lawrence?
No, it was about...
Harmonization.
Yeah, it was about, with Lawrence, this energy here that feels... This is quite common. What we just said with Iona, piti can feel actually unpleasant at times. I define it as pleasantness, really, as non-sensually arising pleasantness. But for a lot of people, at different stages in their sort of exploration of samadhi, piti actually feels unpleasant. It's too agitating, or it's too coarse, or...
I just want to go to sukha.
Yeah, very common. And for a lot of people who've tasted more of the calmer end of samadhi, after you become what I call a piti snob. It's like something that you would have given your right arm for, a couple of years ago. This bliss now becomes, or it's actually unpleasant, and we sort of have to find a relationship with it that allows it to be pleasant again. Part of that is the allowing. So it's like allowing and tuning into. There is some, if it is what it might be, there is some enjoyment there, and I've just gotten into a relationship with it where I tune to the unpleasant, and the very resistance to it is fabricating it as unpleasant. If I can open to it and just find the pleasure, it actually starts fabricating as pleasant. So this if it's, I'm actually not sure, but maybe when we get together more I can get the sense, but if it is that, that's actually quite common. It's actually very common at different stages. So it's, again, everything depends on the relationship. Everything, similar to what Rachel asked, everything depends on the relationship. The relationship conditions, fabricates, shapes, guides what unfolds. Body, world, emotion, mind, image, energy, all of it. Yeah. So that there's, yeah. But anyway, that's a general point. But, okay, let's have a bit of quiet.
Thank you for listening. To learn